Annyeonghaseyo, welcome to Afternoona Delight, where Leah, Megan, and Amy, three American romance novelists discussing all things K-romance from a writer's lens. We fangirl over our favorite actors and actresses, talk up our trope addictions, and nerd out on K-drama deep dives. We'll throw in a few K-pop and K-skincare recs for good measure, because why not ride the Hallyu wave all the way to shore? So grab some tteokbokki and listen to your new favorite unease.
Hey, everybody.
Hi there.
I feel like we have to start with a hey, everybody, even though it's not Leah saying hey, everybody. So, welcome, everybody. This is the Afternoona Delight podcast, but we are short one of our regular members tonight because Leah she called in sick tonight. She's sick. Her kids are sick.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, take a sick day if you need it, people. That's the lesson here.
Absolutely, self-care.
Even from your podcast.
So Leah has the night off, and we hope that she feels better soon. We hope that her kids feel better soon, because they got all kinds of stuff going around the Leah household. So we'll miss her tonight, but luckily, we've got somebody new with us tonight.
I will introduce our guest. The three of us sometimes agree and sometimes disagree on elements of K-dramas we discuss, but one thing we all have in common is that we are authors. We started this podcast wanting to discuss dramas as writers, and particularly romance writers, which has its own conventions that we often see mirrored in K-dramas. And of course, we aren't the only authors who love K-dramas. This last November, I attended a virtual author conference called Romance Author Mastermind, or RAM, and shout out to RAM because it's amazing. And one of the workshops caught my eye. Immediately, bestselling author Piper J. Drake was going to be talking about how K-dramas are really great influences in storytelling. And I was seriously devastated that I could not attend the workshop as I was hosting one of my own at the exact same time. And I whined about it for a while to like anyone who would listen and my co-host. Yeah. Until a light bulb went off in my head and I was like, hey, I have a K-drama podcast, so I can have Piper on. And so I'm so happy she accepted, and that is why we are so excited to have Piper J. Drake as a guest today on the podcast to discuss K-dramas with supernatural elements. So,
yay!
Woo!
Welcome, Piper.
So, Piper, please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them about your books.
Oh gosh. Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Piper J. Drake, and I'm an author of romance, of science fiction, of fantasy. I cross genre a lot, and I have a huge love of food and travel and so many Asian dramas. Not just K-dramas, but I'm really big into Chinese dramas and Thai dramas. I myself am from Thailand, and my mom still lives in Thailand, so Piper Mommy is constantly texting me with the latest and greatest that she's been watching of not just Thai dramas, but also K-dramas, Chinese dramas, dramas from Taiwan, Malaysia, Myanmar, like sometimes. So I have so much love for the Asian dramas, and no matter what genre I'm personally writing, I try to give you a taste of hard challenges in life, but like relieve that with a happy breath of laughter and a broad range of strengths and weaknesses throughout the characters. I'm really into the competence porn, and I love first kisses, which is something that we really preserve in Asian dramas, like that moment and the heat of excitement. Like, you can get so much intensity in a K-drama from just like the shoulder bump or like the brush of fingertips, and that first kiss, by the time a first kiss happens, you're falling off the couch freaking out like it happened. And so that's generally what I try to capture in my books, as well as all of those, like all the feels quality, like all of that swing of feels. And I guess also the dog lives in my books always. That's my promise to my readers. Pretty well known for my True Hero series, which features military working dogs, and also, I've got working dogs in a lot of my sci-fi as well. So yes, the dog lives always. And so do the cats, the ferrets, if it's furry, also feathered. Pretty much, yeah, the animals live. Humans, body count habits.
We don't care about the humans. We just want the dog to live.
Right? Like, that's the promise.
I did one time read a romance book where the heroine had like a bunch of chickens, and these weren't just like chickens. She named them. They had personalities in the book.
So they were family. Yeah.
They were family. They were pets. All the chickens died.
No!
And then the dog died. In one
book.
in one book. I swear
I'm
to God.
sorry, I would have had to walk away from that story. Like, I get that there's a romantic arc and everything, but like, do not sacrifice the chickens, friends.
Chickens and a dog. I closed the book and, well, it was ebook. I closed out the ebook and I was like, and I made a note of the author. Like, I don't know if you're an author who's listening and you killed chickens and a dog. I'm sorry. I couldn't handle your book.
But like, don't,
it was just...
don't kill chickens and a dog, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, I have a chicken story that tells you my Piper personality right from the get-go, right?
Okay.
So I used to spend my summers in Thailand with my grandparents every couple of summers. And I went to school here in the U.S. because I was born here in the U.S. So it was like very much growing up in two different cultures. And, you know, I was known in Thailand amongst my family as a very quirky child. And they weren't sure how much of it was because I was raised in the U.S. and how much of it was just me being a quirky child. And I was very much like an animal whisperer, right? Like, they always had to pat me down before coming into the house because I always had pockets full of, like, baby chicks or geckos and stuff like that. So they were just patting me down before I came into the house because they didn't want them in the house. So when we would be making chicken curry that night for dinner, my grandma would send me out to go get a chicken, right? Because I was also, while being an animal lover, cognizant that we also ate them. Like, I knew where chicken came from in the store, like, you know, and so I was the fastest in the house at catching a chicken. So around the 10-minute mark, you know, my cousins are like, where'd she go? She's so fast. She can catch a chicken in like 2 minutes. So what's going on here? And she was like, don't worry, she'll be back in a couple minutes. And it was because I would take the chicken that I caught and I would trot down to the market down the road. And we're talking like, this is a village, so dirt road, right? Like, down to the market and trade it for a chicken I didn't know.
Oh my God!
Because, like, I am not against eating the chicken, but I needed to, like, it had to be a chicken I didn't know. Right? And the village thought I was so quirky. They were always laughing at my dad about this, right? And so they tried to, like, 2 days later, I was back again with another chicken. And I'm like, you know, 10. And so they tried to trade back the chicken that I had traded 2 days before. I'm like, no, I recognize this chicken. You can't give me back this chicken because we're going to eat it. Like, there's a reason I traded this chicken. Like, you cannot, like, that's a terrible thing to do to a child, to try to swap in a chicken again that they do know. Like, the whole point was that I, as a child, was like, I'm at peace with the fact that I love animals, but I also eat animals. Right. And so my thing was, I need to not know it. Like, it cannot be named.
That story.
I couldn't feed it, right? Like, I had, you know, and like, I couldn't have been the one to feed it and cuddle it and hug it and love it. Like, no. Like, so, and I'm very much a carnivore, right? Like, I do enjoy a variety of protein that runs away from you when you go after it, right? Like, or swims away from you, or hops away from you, like, right? Like, so that was my childhood into adulthood thing, is like, I can't know zombie apocalypse. All right, fine. Like, I am a survivor, right? But like, in today's level of entitlement and privilege, I don't want to know the animal that I'm about to eat. So if you're gonna kill your chickens can be really sweet. Like, I have a friend who, like, creates chicken saddles to protect her hens.
Oh my gosh.
Have you ever seen a chicken saddle?
I have seen those. My favorite is when they put the pants on the chicken.
The pants on the chicken are a little different. Like, I get it.
Oh my gosh,
but the chicken saddles are, like, a real issue when you have a rooster that's a little too rough. Or if the hen likes it a little too rough, right? Like, she needs a saddle to protect her.
Leah has chickens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Leah does have chickens. I write cowboy romance, and I have a chicken that runs through a series, and she's a psychic chicken. Like, she can sense when two people are meant to be together.
Wait, which one?
My first cowboy series.
Oh, that is the cutest thing. You never told me that.
She is an aunt, and, like, long story, but she's like an aunt in the first series, and in the second series, she gets her own book, and the psychic chicken is part of that book, too.
Oh, I thought you meant that psychic chicken got
No, the aunt who owns the psychic chicken. But the chicken is...
Okay, maybe a novella is the chicken.
The chicken does need her own story by this point, yes.
So, Piper, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your, like, K-drama or Asian drama watching journey, and kind of, like, what was your first K-drama?
Okay, so in my day job, I'm a subject matter expert for regulatory affairs in pharmaceutical research and development in life sciences. And I was working for an IT company as a consultant when I first headed over into the world of consulting versus working for pharma. And it was an IT company that developed applications for life sciences, and it was Korean owned. I mean, all of the executive positions were taken up by Korean because they were Korean Americans, because they had been the ones that had started the company together. And a lot of the admin group was also Korean or Korean American. And I remember when I had started the company as a consultant, I traveled like 80% of my time. But I popped into the office pretty often. And usually when I did, somebody would take me under their wing and take me out to lunch. And I'd end up in like this hole-in-the-wall sundubu place having sundubu jjigae, which they never took a lot of the other my other colleagues to, because that wasn't the kind of food that they preferred, so they asked to be taken someplace else for lunch. But I remember during those times, there'd be K-dramas up on the television as we were, having our sundubu jjigae, and we'd have a raw egg, and we'd crack it in there, and it's like, yay, and you don't really do that at restaurants, but we did. And I remember the first one that I really got hooked on was, it was either Coffee Prince or Palace, which is also called Princess Hours. And Coffee Prince in particular was kind of saucy, speaking of like saucy stuff, because they had, like, up till then, kisses were pretty chaste, right? In K-dramas, because this is like 2005, 2006. So they were still pretty conservative and very, very chaste about their kisses. And, but Coffee Prince was literally like a kiss, slam back into a door, wrap the legs around the waist, kissing. And I was like,
butt grab.
It's one of my favorite scenes ever. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then, Princess Hours or Palace it drew me in so much. Like the next time I would come into the office, like the admins would be like, what do you think? And I'd be wrecked. I just spent an hour in there, like going nuts over this drama because I was wrecked. And I mean, that was an emotional roller coaster, Princess Hours. And honestly, I'm conflicted because there was a lot of, like, the hero treated the heroine really terribly. And I have the same problem with Hana Yori Dango, Boys Over Flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yeah. That is so popular. It was originally a Japanese manga, and it got made into a Japanese drama, a J-drama, a K-drama in Korea, Taiwan, and now there's a Thai release that came out in this past year. Like, this thing keeps getting reiterated because it's so popular. Mm-hmm. But that one is not particularly for me, that storyline, because, again, the hero is so terrible to the heroine. Like, I don't like it when any of the participants in the main core romance are terrible to each other, right? Like, it's one thing to have one scene where somebody makes a mistake and lashes out. But when they're just a terrible, terrible personality and I'm going to love you anyway, and then you're going to come to cherish me, it depends on how long it's going to last, because I can't stick with it for as long as it went on. And that was one of the problems for me when it came to Palace or Princess Hours, because it went on and on and on, right?
Yeah.
Like, ouch. And that's the same thing with Boys Over Flowers for me. It's like, that went on for a while.
Yeah, I watched the Chinese remake of Boys Over Flowers, which is called Meteor Garden.
Yeah.
And so Amy and Leah saw Boys Over Flowers, the one with, like, Lee Min-ho, the K-drama. I haven't seen it, but, I mean, I would say, like, Meteor Garden was just, I mean, it's batshit. And it was, like, 46 episodes, and it consumed my life for 2 weeks. Like, I couldn't stop watching it, but it was, like, had every trope under the sun. Like, I'm talking, like, like amnesia. Yep. Just, I can't even think of them all, because it's just every single one you can imagine. And I was addicted to it, but when I was done, I was like, that was actually kind of terrible. Like,
that was like very toxic relationship.
Toxic, thank you.
It was a super toxic.
It was one of those things. So, like, Leah and I talked about it because we did an episode comparing Boys Over Flowers and Heirs or Inheritors.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, Heirs.
Yes. We were comparing those, and we were talking about how you can say to yourself, "Yes, I know this is problematic." And you can still enjoy it because you know it's problematic and you know that this would never be okay in real life. And it's that sort of, like the bully fantasy, right? Like that's, it's the little bit of, sort of butter in that if we're talking about,
Yeah. No, I get it. And I would say that Hana Yori Dango is just a little too long for me. But it goes on a little too much.
Yeah. It was not good. It was very hard to watch. It was definitely hard to watch. Yeah. But it was also, I had already fallen in love with Lee Min-ho at that point from watching
So you were already in.
We watched The King Eternal Monarch, and then we went back and watched Boys Over Flowers. And so it was really, it was, in my head, I'm like, you're Ligon, the king, you're not this guy. You're not Go Junpyo. You're not Go Junpyo. You're not Go Junpyo.
You're in your Navy uniform making rice. You're the king. You're not this perm.
I do understand the love for it, even though it is problematic.
Yeah, you got to give the nod to how compelling it is.
Yes,
you gotta binge it.
It's compelling.
Once you start watching it, you do have to binge it. Like, that's why I've been avoiding the Thai drama one. My mom keeps texting me, like, Piper Mommy's like, have you watched it yet? I'm like, no, I can't. I'm not in the right place. I can't do it.
So, can you tell us your top 3 dramas, or you can tell us your top 5, whatever. But also, I know it's hard, but also, like, kind of like your favorite tropes.
Okay, so I have a couple from a couple of different countries for you.
Great.
In terms of K-drama, I will say that what I have noticed is that the first one that I have thought of to gush over every time I talk K-dramas to anybody, it keeps coming back to Hotel Del Luna. And I think a part of that reason why, even though I'm normally someone who gravitates towards stronger heroes and like your alpha heroes, your grumpy, incredibly strong alpha hero, Hotel Del Luna features centrally around a woman who is your supernatural element, right? Like, she's lived for centuries and she exists on spite and revenge. And she's so filled with it that they make her the proprietress of this hotel. And the whole point of the hotel is when people die and have unfinished business, they come and they stay at this hotel until they've been facilitated to finish their business before moving on. And she herself is such a level of contradictions that I love that. And the trope of having somebody who's prickly, who seems shallow, but it turns out they're really not. They're really insightful and they really care in their own quiet way. But at the same time, they're still going to hustle and get, benefit for herself and the hotel. Was like this mix of complexity that I found really refreshing, as opposed to somebody who is just intrinsically all good. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, she wasn't a supernatural that was all good. No. She was materialistic, right? and sometimes she didn't have time for the petty little things or the petty kind things. But what you found out was that ultimately she saw through a lot of twisty, turny things. Like, every episode is this thing where you're first presented with people and things and scenarios, and you think it's one way, and it turns out, no. It is almost, in a horror perspective, completely the opposite. And in a lot of times, there are dangerous people where no one is the clear bad guy. No one's the clear evil. They do escalate to a point where they do meet somebody who is clearly an evil person, but like, there's just that level of complexity of like, these are tough situations, and what you have to realize is what you thought was happening isn't. And I love that aspect of Hotel Del Luna. I love IU. I do enjoy her music too, but I love her in that role because she's so complex and she's not innocent. And I don't think a person who would have been a proprietress of that hotel could be innocent, because they had to have insight and they had to be jaded and they had to know and accept the flaws that people, because everybody who's walking in is also, appearance-wise, horrific because of the death that they suffered for whatever reason. And I loved that. I also loved that the hero and potential love interest was more of a beta male character. He was somebody who wasn't as strong as her, but the strength of his faith and his conviction that she would do the right thing made her do the right thing. That was something that I found really drew me in about Hotel Del Luna. He would look at her and he's like, I know that you did this terrible thing, but I also know that you're going to protect me. And so he put himself in harm's way, knowing he didn't have the power to save his own darn self, because he had the faith and conviction that she'd do the right thing. And that was really compelling to me. So I really loved Hotel Del Luna for that. And there's a dog.
Oh, no.
That lives?
No, kind of, sort of. The dog goes to heaven, all right? In this situation with Hotel Del Luna and stories like this, just know that all dogs go to heaven.
There's a dog in Goblin. That dog goes to freaking heaven. I will tell you that. I cried.
Oh my gosh,
I mean, it's a little bit of a spoiler, right? But just know when you see the dog, he's given a choice and he makes his own choice, and all dogs go to heaven. That's right. That's all you got to know about that episode. Just stick with me. So yeah, so Hotel del Luna is my fave for all of those complex reasons, right? I would say my next one would be Falling Into Your Smile. So Falling Into Your Smile is a Chinese drama, and I love it because it's esports. In particular, it's a MOBA that is very similar to League of Legends, and I play League of Legends. It's actually an existing MOBA that's very popular in East Asia. And the idea here is that our heroine is the first pro female esports player. And she's brought onto a team, and she is the top mid lane player. And so it's a lot of fun because I really enjoy that you have a very competent heroine. And one of the first things they do is they establish her confidence and they establish her skills, and then they wreck her, and then they bring her back. And it's because the team understands her and the team captain understands her, and they bring her back because she's in a higher level of performance now that she's in the pro league, right? So you have to have a hero that kind of goes through that journey where they fail a little bit before they start to grow and succeed again. And it's a sweet romance that's a slow burn because you have the grumpy versus sunshine, you have the really tall, super, they call them godlike players, right? Because they're that good and they're known to be that good. And, they're held on a pedestal, and I love the trope of your grumpy versus sunshine. And there's this really cute overall recurring theme of comparing her to a bunny. There's even a point where she's trying to decide whether or not she's going to wear sexy underwear or she's going to wear cute underwear. And her cute underwear happens to be one that has a bunny print where a bunny's holding a carrot. And there's one of those classic moments where he walks in and accidentally sees, and then walks out, and and then she's like, "You saw," and he's like, "I did. I'm sorry." Right? He immediately apologizes. Okay. Aww. And then later, they're using chat, and he's replaced her avatar in his phone with a bunny holding a carrot, and everybody's like, "Who's this?" He's like, and he won't tell anybody who it is. And she's like, "You need to take that down." And he's like, "Who else is gonna know?" Who else are you showing your underwear to? And so there's these fun little moments that way through this whole story, as they're also competitive esports, and you get to meet these other teams and these other personalities. So it's so much fun for that. This is one of the ones that has a really healthy bestie relationship. She has a kick-ass bestie. She has an amazing bestie who is supportive, who's her own personality. Best trope ever when you have a really strong female bestie, best friend situation, and not pitting all of the females against each other, which is also something that's still common in a lot of stories that I'm not really here for. I want to write more besties into my own story after watching this drama.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then I think that if I had to name a third, Boy for Rent is super cute. My mom, Piper Mommy, sent me this rec, and it's not on Viki, Rakuten Viki, or Netflix. You're going to have to YouTube search for it. There are English subtitles on YouTube for it. But basically what we have here is your host club scenario. We have a fairly innocent, immature young woman who's in college who wants to date, and she tries to ask a guy out to date, and he says, "I'm really looking for someone who's a little bit more understanding of what an adult romantic relationship is." And so she ends up with this pamphlet or flyer for this company called Boy for Rent, and she asks them to set her up with an escort who can teach her about adult romance and how to love like an adult. Meanwhile, there's another girl who is much more worldly, whose boyfriend is cheating on her, she finds out. So she wants a guy, an escort, who can make her forget about her boyfriend. And the reason why these two girls meet is because they end up grabbing the same flyer and end up having to tear it in half to go to the club. And so they both rent these guys from Boy for Rent for their own goals, and they go through the storyline. But the twist is girl A, who needs to learn about adult love, her escort is actually the boyfriend of girl B, who's trying to forget about him. And the guy who's with girl B is actually the boy that girl A had originally asked out on a date, and who told her that she needed to learn how to love like an adult before he considered dating her. It's a really fun one, and it was just wow, this one's cute.
what inspired you to create your workshop about storytelling in K-dramas, and kind of like what was the response of the attendees and all of that?
Yeah, so I was actually invited to lead a roundtable discussion, which is shorter than your normal workshop or panel at Romance Author Mastermind in 2021. And they originally invited me to speak on the topic using K-dramas to maximize your story, which is a really catchy title. And they had already had the topic and they wanted me to talk on it. And they were super open to suggestions from me. So I asked if we could expand the scope to talk about Asian dramas and not just K-dramas, because there's so many good ones across the various regions. And I also wanted to adjust and frame the discussion as K-drama inspirations to maximize your story rather than using K-dramas. Because I think I've seen a little bit out there where it's hot takes where you're going to use the story structure from this country or use the storytelling style from this country. And there's a difference in intent when you say, I'm going to use that thing from that country versus, wow, I really love how they do this and I'm inspired by that to write my own stories. So I was very, very intentional about changing the tone of the topic title because of that. And it's one of the things that I do when I teach for Writing the Other. Even the phrasing of your topic when you present it will set the tone for whether it's going to turn into appropriation, which we want to avoid, or whether we want to just share in the joy of admiring and loving these things from other places and wanting to understand them more, and also be inspired to write stories that incorporate those elements that we've learned from them, right? So that was one of the things that I had wanted to do for that, and I was excited to do that, and I hope I did a good job for RAM. And some of the things that I talked about when it came to Asian dramas was doing a quick intro for anybody who didn't know what they were, and then let's talk about like why we love them. And a lot of it had to do with like these really addictive elements to K-dramas. So I call them out in my workshop in like the handout. And it's the style of storytelling. One of the things that's different from a lot of series that you have here in the US is a lot of series that you have here in the US, we're always looking to see if they're going to get renewed for another season. Like Supernatural went for how many seasons? So, but the fact is that you can tell that the storytelling in the US for these types of shows and the writer's room, they have to write for a season and also not know whether they're going to be, they need to button it up because they're not going to get continued for a new season. Or if they do, they're like, yay, we can explore this other arc. And then sometimes it jumps the ship, right? Like you get too many arcs. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a Buffy lover, but Buffy went too long.
So did The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead
went a little too long. So the thing about Asian dramas and the storytelling there I went into is that they are planned at 16 to 20 episodes, and it is a complete arc. It is also one where they hit a climax at like the second to last episode, and then the final episode is the denouement, and you get whiplash with these ambiguous happy endings. Like whiplash, like you just get this montage of everybody walking around and they're happily ever after, and you're very, very confused, right? Like, so that is a storytelling style, and I really can't throw rocks at that because a lot of my books have like this massive climax, and then my readers get whiplash because the ending just like is all downhill at an uncontrolled speed, and the end, right? Like, so it is that storytelling aspect, and then there's also these precious moments, and these are moments that my partner Matthew has to get up and walk out of. He's like, I cannot believe they're going to stop and watch this kiss from 7 different camera angles, plus a drone must have been around too. Like,
yes, it's so true.
And it's not just the kisses, right? Like you'll see a crash into you moment, and that's like one of my favorite moments. The first kiss, the back hug.
I love the back hug.
It's like 20 seconds long. And then there's the story hooks. There's always that end of the episode story hook, which I think that authors of serial writing, anybody who's in Radish or like Kindle Vella, almost all of those apps recommend that you have a story hook at the end of your chapter. It's not quite a cliffhanger, but it is definitely something where people are chomping at the bit to know what happens in the next chapter.
And that's a whole storytelling thing you have to learn. I one time wrote a serial for my newsletter. And it was, that was years ago, but it was a really great lesson for me. Like, I actually felt like I learned a lot because I had to end it on a cliffy, or they're not even going to want to bother reading the next newsletter. And it was really fun to, like, find that point. And I still try to do that, you know, in my current writing. I think it was Tiffany Rice who one time said, write a chapter. That's essentially like, you know, a chapter is like taking your scene from beginning to end. And so usually there's some sort of conclusion at the end of a scene. And then she said, chop the chapter in half and end it there. Like and I don't always do that, but I remember that was one of my favorite lessons I've ever heard. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I write it and I'm like, there's an ending here, but like I'm gonna chop it in the middle and end my chapter there.
Yeah, and that's why I call it story hooks rather than cliffhangers, right? Because I think a cliffhanger is a kind of story hook that you can use, or technique that you can use to draw the readers to want to read the next chapter in a serial story or the next episode in a K-drama. But it's only one of many. Like the technique that you mentioned is also a really good way to do it, and you'll see it in some TV writer, like in some episodes. And I think that some of the other ones is the promise of the kiss. The chapter closes with a phrase like, would you hit me if I kissed you?
Yeah.
Like, that's not a cliffhanger. That's a promise. And I need to know how she responds in the next day. Like, hello.
So true. I love that.
So the story hook techniques are really fun.
Like, I love when a K-drama ends on the kiss, right? Like, it ends right there and you don't know what the reaction is afterwards.
Right, and of course you want to find out the reaction to the kiss. Sometimes it's not just the kiss; it's the reaction of the characters and everyone else to the kiss. That's so great.
Yeah, like those kinds of moments are what I would talk about when and it was hard to smash that into 15 minutes. By the way, like I had to talk fast.
15 minutes?
They were round tables of 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Mine was like how to reinvent yourself, because it was about how I started a pen name, and I was like blah 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 blah, blah, like reading like super fast. It was rough. I'd like get to the end and I have like a minute left and I'm like, whew, like I'd be like sweating. It was quick.
I would love to do a full-on workshop on this topic. Like I really do think that it could.
I hope someone asks you.
We're putting this out there in the world, friend. Ask your conferences.
And we've talked about that before, how K-dramas do inspire. I mean, I think us in our writing, and our listeners have asked that before, if it inspires us, and we're like, heck yeah. I would say, for me, it just inspired me to kind of lean even more heavily into my tropes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's something that K-dramas do unapologetically. It's very self-aware. You want this trope, and we're going to give it to you. There's only one bed in the whole hotel. Yes, we will give it to you. Like... Yeah.
I mean, recently Twitter was just going on about it. And look, the one bed thing happens. As a business traveler who traveled 80% of my time for over 10 years, I'm going to tell you, the one bed thing happens more often than you think.
Yeah. Did you ever see Fight for My Way? Because there's a really funny scene where they go to a hotel because they're like friends that have this, they start to have this like sexual tension, and they like get to this hotel and they're like waiting for the woman to come. Like they're like, we need 2 hotel rooms, and the woman like leaves to like, you know, I guess like figure out where to put them, and they're both talking to each other, and they're like, there's probably, I mean, they're really busy. It's probably only one room. I mean, I guess we're gonna have to stay together.
They're already preparing themselves for this.
Oh, they're already. Well, they're like both kind of hoping it happens. So they're like, in a way, like they're kind of talking like, well, I guess we'll just have to deal. But you can tell they're like secretly hoping. And then the woman overhears them and comes back, and she's like, actually, I have so many hotel rooms. I wasn't sure where to put you. And they were like,
it's a fun flip.
I love Fight for My Way so much, but yeah, it's really funny scene. But I'm really glad you were able to do that workshop, and I'm sad that I wasn't able to attend, but then I feel like this is even better.
Because we get more than 15 minutes of a round table. Yeah.
Yeah, we have way more than 15 minutes. And so this is kind of a question for all of us. Are we seeing a rise in K-drama watching among romance readers and bloggers and authors?
Having started watching back when I did, I won't say that by any means that was as early as it could have been, right? Like, definitely a Japanese anime watcher, and I watched, that was years and years prior. I've noticed a lot more people are mentioning that they have checked out at least 1 or 2 Asian dramas. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that more and more are available on Netflix. And I think that that's great. I personally tend to watch my Asian dramas via Rakuten Viki because the subtitles are better. And a lot of times the subtitlers there also will give you insight into a colloquial or a slang term.
I love that they do that.
That Netflix often just tries to turn into a US phrase. Like the choice for Netflix is to let's translate this the way that we would do an English dub. And so we want to say a thing in the same amount of time that hits kind of the same way, but it's an English phrase, and it loses something in translation. Whereas in Viki, they'll actually take the time to explain the thing. Like, they'll explain the pun, they'll explain the slang, they'll explain the mythology a little bit. And I prefer that. So I have a tendency to watch Rakuten Viki more than I have a tendency to watch Netflix. But I am glad that Netflix has so much out there now, and I think that we're seeing just a lot more people mentioning it because it's so accessible.
And that was the gateway for us.
And there's a lot more on YouTube.
I think I'm noticing other authors and bloggers and stuff mentioning K-dramas on social media now because I'm looking for it, right? Like, now that I'm watching it like every single day. So I don't know if it's that more people are watching or that I'm just like noticing it more. But I do, yeah, I mean, Netflix is a great sort of gateway to it, but we've all, like Leah and Megan and I, we've all gotten subscriptions to Viki because there's stuff that we would have never found, you know, otherwise. Like, I think Goblins on Viki, isn't it? And so that was the second drama I watched. So it took me Crash Landing on You, and then I'm like, getting a Viki subscription, you know,
no turning back.
Yeah, no, and I'm so happy with it. But yeah, so I don't know if more people are watching or if I'm just noticing it more now. But I do see it more in my, you know, news feeds and stuff, and it makes me very happy to see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It does seem to me like a lot of book bloggers I follow are starting to get into it, and it makes me so happy because then they're posting about K-dramas like mixed in with their romance books. And that just makes me happy because that means I'm hoping that the readers who follow them are then also willing to take a chance on watching K-dramas. And it's just so funny too because they'll post about like one, like if I saw a couple recently started watching and then they just like descend into madness. They're just like watching K-dramas like all the time.
It's a straight on head, like dive head first into the deep end. Like there is no just dip your toe in the waters. There's,
exactly.
You know.
And I also agree that Viki subs are so much better than Netflix. One thing I prefer is that I want to know when the characters are using each other's names or when they're using honorifics, as opposed to when they're using like Hyung or Ani. Like Hyung is
or Uni or Nuna.
Yeah, it's important when they use those terms as opposed to names in like Korean culture. So I want to know that. So that's just me having to like pick it up, obviously with my ear. Which yes, I can do that. But I kind of just wish sometimes Netflix would just like put it in
because they often just put the name.
They put the name, and I'm like, but it's really like I remember when I watched Squid Game, it was like really really important when there was two characters who essentially dropped honorifics and started using Hyung. That was really really important. And like my husband, I like had to explain it to him. I'm like, this is really important.
Yeah, no, it's a relationship dynamic, right?
Yes.
In Korean language. And it's interesting because if you watch multiple Asian dramas, like the honorifics and suffixes and prefixes in Thai language are way different. And they work differently than the Korean ones do. So like in the Korean ones, oftentimes people refer to each other as their last names. This is also in Japan, right? Like they've referred to each other in last names, especially if you're watching like high school dramas. Last name, last name, last name, last name, last name, until your friendship gets so close, you're on a first name basis. And that is a significant difference and milestone in the relationship. Thailand does go in a different route, right? Like we don't go by last name. We don't go by surnames. It's considered an intentional choice of distancing if you're using last names, right? Like everybody's on a nickname basis. Like I have a Thai nickname, like, and a lot of people are on first name or nickname bases, right? Because there's such a communal feel of everybody is family until you're not.
Until you're not.
Thai, like until you're not, until you effed up, like your family,
and then you're shunned.
And then there's like the prefixes based on age of P, which is older, and Nong, and their sibling connotations. Right, like I had this amazing Asian auntie who technically was old enough to be a grandma. So by Thai etiquette, I should have referred to her as grandma. But she was a ballroom dancer, and she had performed in front of the King of Thailand, and she was also one of the oldest ballerinas in the world. She was amazing, and she was cool, and she was kick butt, and like, and she would like, I called her Ba, which is auntie instead, and my mom tried to correct me to have her call her grandmother, and she was like, no, she can call me Ba. Like, let's stick with that one. We're gonna stick with auntie on this one. So, yeah, all of those prefixes and suffixes, I think that you more often get them in Rakuten Viki for the subtitles. And that is so indicative of the relationships. And sometimes when you're going to stick it to somebody, that's the way that it happens because it's subtle. And you need that translation to hear it, or you start to develop to hear it on your own.
All right, and now it's time for our favorite segment of the podcast. It is the K-pop Rec of the Week, and since Piper is a fan of K-pop, we're going to have her make her recommendation.
Okay, before I make my rec, I have to say that my current favorite groups, because I don't consider myself really well-versed in K-pop, I just do enjoy a lot of it. So my current favorite groups are BTS, BTOB, EXO, Blackpink, and Mamamoo. I do have a couple of favorite songs by Twice as well, but that gives you an idea of what we're working with. And actually, I'm going to be in Vegas next month for a writing week. At the same time, BTS is performing Permission to Dance concerts in Vegas, and I don't have tickets to one of the shows. So I'm going to be there, and I know that there's going to be so much BTS army walking around Vegas at that time, and I'm not actually there. I'm supposed to be there to write, right? Like, inspiration-wise, it's going to be amazing because I'm going to be in Vegas at the same time as BTS. I'm just not going to one of the concerts. But that being the case, I think my K-pop Rec of the Week is actually going to be BTOB's comeback song, which is actually, I think the English translation is the song. BTOB is a ballad group, and them coming back as a full group now that a lot of their members have come back from the military, like, it's just wow. Like, their ballads knock it out of the park. Like, I first started listening to BTOB's ballads when it was the original soundtrack to Cinderella and the Four Knights. That's how I was introduced to BTOB. And that soundtrack is amazing. So this comeback song is very recent.
And I'll put it on our Spotify playlist, because we have a Spotify playlist, too.
So that's my rec.
Yay! Well, thank you.
If you enjoy our podcast, you have our patrons to thank. At least in part. Afternoona Delight Patreon allows us to keep creating content for y'all to enjoy. Thank you so much to everyone who is supporting us there. And not to brag, but our Patreon community is pretty awesome. And you can join at a tier that feels good to you. Gain access to fun perks like Kdrama posts, monthly Patreon-only bonus podcasts, and even a live Kdrama support group on Zoom. Because we know firsthand what it's like to have no one to talk to about those crazy plot twists, amazing characters, and all those feelings. And look, no one should have to walk that walk alone. So learn more by visiting afternoonadelight.com. That's www.afternoonadelight.com. And hey, while you're on the website, you can check out Afternoona Delight podcast merch, find links to book recommendations, bop along to our K-pop recs, glow up your skin with K-merch recs, find all of our social media, and a link to our email so you can send us recommendations or feedback. And hey, while you're at it, why don't you pop over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review? It really helps with our discoverability. 감사합니다.
Okay, so now we're going to really get into talking about K-dramas with supernatural elements. So from nine-tailed foxes to grim reapers to mermaids, K-dramas have them all.
Yes.
So question for us now, what is a favorite non-contemporary K-drama or two, and why?
So I had 3. I already talked about Hotel de Luna, so I'm going to skip that. But the next one I want to talk about is Color Rush, which is both a movie, a TV series. I will say that the movie is probably the tighter storytelling. On one hand, it's a really great boys' love drama. So BL, K-drama, the touches are intense, right? But it's not hanky-panky. It's like you're in the classroom and he leans over you and you're like, ah! Right? It's like those moments are done super, super well and also super intense. And I really love it for that. And it's also a really cool supernatural element because the premise in Color Rush is that there are some people who walk through the world in monochrome. They're basically colorblind. But there are people in the world who are a match to them who, when that person is around them and comes into their line of sight, the world bursts into color. And once you start seeing color, there's a danger that you might get obsessive and have dangerous tendencies and potentially kill the person who gives color to your world because of the addictive quality of having color come into your world and then them leaving and you being left in grays again. And then wanting them to come back, being hungry for them to come back, and then not being able to stand for them not to be back. So there are instances where people like just completely become unhinged because of this situation. So it's a really cool supernatural element to work with in the base of storytelling. And there's a lot of metaphorical stuff that goes on when it comes to the experience of being queer. Like right down to reprogramming, the attempt to reprogramming and being like, no, you can't reprogram me. Like this isn't a psychological thing where I've convinced myself of a thing. This is a part of who I am, right? Like, so that aspect of Color Rush is also there. But I will say it's really well done from that delicious, and this is something that maybe Western audiences aren't as used to, but like the character who is really hard to read. And so he seems emotionless and he seems buttoned up, right? Like we're used to seeing a lot of emotion, even in the grumpy characters. But this character, like he doesn't give up the emotions. Like you almost have no idea what he's thinking about or what his emotional drivers are. And that's hard to see in TV. So they have one of those characters, and then you have his match, who's also like a much more emotive, expressive guy. And they're a great foil against each other. And the chemistry between them could use work, but they really hit all of those precious moments, like those little brushes of the hand and the leaning over you and like the close proximity step into the personal bubble space. Like, so Color Rush is a great story for that. So I would say that's a favorite of mine for boys love right now.
We did do a short podcast on Color Rush, just for anyone listening, if you want to go back and listen to it. We all loved it as well. I would say it was an incredibly original premise, and I would have watched 12 episodes. Like, hands down, I was sad it was so short because I thought that there was so much unexplored that could have been explored. I loved the main characters. I thought it was beautiful. Like, the way it was shot and how the world would turn color.
The color would come into the world.
Gosh.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
that's really well done.
Color rush. Because that was like a thing where you would get a rush of color. I just thought it was beautiful. Like, just visually.
Cinematically, they were good choices. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Special nod to Grandpa Ghost, too. We don't want to leave out Grandpa Ghost.
We loved Grandpa Ghost. We loved Grandpa Ghost.
Grandpa
the guy
Ghost.
who, like... It was just so we laughed so hard because it was like random and never explained. It's just this guy that had a grandpa ghost in him,
and he just does.
Like, and we're just supposed to,
and you just
accept it.
Yeah, you accept it, and that's again the supernatural element aspect of it, of why it's one of my favorite supernaturals. Switch On is another one I want to give a shout out to because it's a Thai drama that was pretty well done, and it's fun because it plays with virtual reality, and in this case, your heroine and several other characters. Like, everybody's going into this virtual reality game. And for those of you who really like Japanese anime, it's a very similar premise to Sword Art Online in that way. But people don't get stuck in there, right? So the heroine goes into this virtual reality, and a lot of people play this game. And it's not originally designed for virtual reality yet. It's like test software. And she's looking for her father. And she meets the main hero character of the virtual reality world, and he becomes self-aware, and he starts to realize that she's logging in and out, and he finds a way to log out and step into the real world.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
And actually manifest in the real world. And it is a remake. There's a K-drama called W.
Right, which I still haven't seen.
And that, and so these two are tied together in that fact. And so they're both really interesting in this take of swinging across from the real world to the virtual, or manhwa, if it's W. And so that self-awareness that you're in a world that's been created by a real world that is out there is really kind of a cool supernatural premise. And it's kind of another one that's similar to that is The Extraordinary You, which I've talked to you about. I would say The Extraordinary You is fun because all the characters in there slowly become aware that they're actually characters in a manga, right? Like, there are characters in a book, and they don't realize it. And then their funny thing is that they're forced to act out the scene that the writer has written.
Oh, fun.
And then in between scenes, they can do whatever the heck they want. They can go off script. Right? Like, so they're all going off script and trying to write their own face, and then they get yoinked into a scene where they have to do what they're supposed to do for the writer for the book.
I didn't realize that was the premise of that. That sounds so cool.
It's super cute, and there's this sound that you hear. It's like, Like, it's like a clicker sound that shows that it's the start of a scene and end of a scene. And here's the funny thing about Extraordinary You, right? Like, so you watch this and you watch the whole show and it's fun. And then if you watch True Beauty, there's cameos of the actors in character in True Beauty.
Okay, so watch Extraordinary You first.
And then watch
okay,
True Beauty.
and
And it's like, it has nothing to do with the main storyline of True Beauty. These are just cameos. But there's literally a movie moment where you hear that sound and the heroine pops up and starts looking for the other guy because the scene's over and she's like, what am I even doing here? And she walks out and you're like, if you don't know the Extraordinary You, you don't know why her behavior is like that, right?
I made a note of that.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So yeah, that trope of the real world versus this fictional world and being aware of whether or not you're a character in the book or if you're you're an actual person in the real world. And I think that the Thai drama remake of it, Switch On, was really cute. It has this actress that I like from other dramas, and she's adorable, right? And she's fun, and she really steps into the character type of like the quirky, fun, high energy, slightly clumsy, but filled with like happy energy character. And also they do take opportunities throughout, as she's explaining to this guy from this virtual world, about things in Thai culture, like the lilawadi, which is a type of flower which people might be familiar if they go to Hawaii, of plumeria or frangipani, right? In Thailand, it used to have a different name, and that name was so close to a bad luck phrase that people wouldn't plant the flower, or the trees, actually, that make the flowers in their gardens or near their homes, because it was so close to a bad luck name. So it was actually a thing where they renamed the flower so that people could embrace the flower again. But it was like she actually goes through and tells the character about this as they're walking through a tree-lined area. And she's like, I wish you could see these when they were in bloom because they're really gorgeous. And then there's another spot where her father is explaining to a Westerner who happens to be a business partner about a scenario, a situation, and references a mythological reference between two bulls, a father bull and his son bull. And he tells the story and he's like, but because you're a Westerner and you didn't grow up in this culture, you're not understanding the metaphor. You're not understanding the danger. You're not understanding the lesson that this folktale tells us. And he's right. The Westerner like completely dismisses him and the lesson. So that's why I like Switch On, because it has like little moments of that really kind of lean hard into Thai culture and help like play with that, because I'm really into folk tales and legends and folklore. And so that's a lot of fun that this is like a really contemporary modern thing. We're talking about virtual reality tech, but we're still learning about mythology and folklore. And we're also got a little bit of like these magical moments going on. So yeah, Switch On is a lot of fun for that. And I
love that. That sounds really cool.
I'm like typing every time you mention something. I'm like opening.
Yeah, me too. I have a little like notepad here, and I've written like the order to watch. Yeah, I've written
like True Beauty.
That's awesome.
Like you want to watch The Extraordinary You first, then True Beauty. And the reason why that there's cameos is because the director is the same director.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they came back for the director.
And I love Easter eggs like that. Oh yeah, like that's so fun.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say that before I talk about mine, like Piper, listening to you talk about Hotel Del Luna makes me want to go back to it, because I started it and left it, but it wasn't because I didn't like it per se. I like a beta hero, but he was so beta in the first few episodes that it just wasn't hitting me in the right spot at the time. And again, like when you go to watch a drama, it all depends on what drama you watched before and what you're kind of in the mood for. And I don't remember what I had watched before, but I just knew that I needed something different in my romance at that point. And so now I definitely want to go back, because everything you said just makes it sound so wonderful.
I agree. Speaking
of heavy, like my favorite, I mean, I'm a broken record on this podcast. It's Goblin. It's always going to be Goblin as far as Supernatural goes.
It's good. It's so good. But can I just say, as much as the romance was epic, that bromance.
Oh my gosh.
That bromance between the Goblin and the Reaper.
Yes.
Yeah. My favorite part.
It's still one of my favorite bromances out there.
It's 100%.
Hands down.
Like, absolutely. I love them together so much. It's wonderful. It is. So yeah, I mean, that's my be all and end all, and forever will be. And I will talk about it every time I'm asked about it. I do want to give an honorable mention to The King Eternal Monarch, because while I do have, and I've talked about this before, quibbles with the overall story, I loved the use of parallel worlds and the doppelgangers. Like, Jo Young and Unsub, like, talk about, like, bromance, and, like, one actor playing the whole bromance is, like, one of the best things I have ever seen. And Woo Do-hwan is the actor. And, like, I cannot get over, like, you know, the whole time it's him playing both roles, but the two characters are so drastically different. And I mean, this is very, like, small part of the story. Like, they do, you know, cross over into each other's worlds, and they do meet, and it's hilarious and wonderful, and it's a bromance, and it's the best thing. So I do think, like, yeah, like I said, I have quibbles with the ending of the drama, but I do think the use of parallel worlds and doppelgangers was done really, really well for the story aspect of it, and the people who play the doppelgangers I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And then all your talk of the AI and the gaming stuff made me remember one that I forgot that we haven't done yet, that Leah and I have seen, but Megan hasn't yet, and that's My Holo Love.
Oh, yeah!
Which was so fun and unexpected, and it was one of those that Leah's like, I'm just going to check this one out. It's on Netflix. It's only 12 episodes. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love this. And then I hopped on and started watching it with her, and we both absolutely loved it, and it was so much fun. And it's one of those, it's like, I think it's like a good sort of, I mean, there's some heavy-ish stuff in it, but I love, you know, the premise of it is, you know, this girl who has face blindness and can't, you know, she can't tell who people are, but she can see holo when she's, you know, wearing the holo glasses. And so she becomes very connected to him. But he is, you know, his avatar is modeled after the guy who created him, who looks exactly like him. And so it's this play of, you know, like, is she in love with the holo? Is she in love with the real guy? And it's a great story. And then there's also, like, you know, some suspense and intrigue with it too, and, you know, attempted murder and all that fun stuff, because I found out watching K-dramas that I love a little murder with my romance. So yeah,
I'm here for it. Okay.
Okay, so Tale of the Nine-Tailed still might be my favorite drama that's not contemporary with supernatural elements because of how absolutely batshit it was. But apparently batshit is one of my favorite tropes, and I'm calling it a trope. I'm not even going to explain the premise of Tale of the Nine-Tailed, because there really isn't a premise, and what premise they start with, it doesn't end that way. They change halfway through. It's insane.
I mean, let's just say that fox demons run rampant.
Fox demons run rampant. They do what they want. See, here's the thing. When I watch a K-drama with supernatural elements, I kind of do want it to be a little crazy and out there and show me something I haven't before.
Yeah.
I mean, do I want it to also make sense? Yes. But Tale of the Nine-Tailed was still so freaking entertaining, and it delivered on showing me things I haven't seen before in a new way.
Yep.
From creepy kid ghost.
Oh, the creepy kid ghost. Like, how do you even extract yourself from that situation?
I don't know. And, like, the weird, like, remember that, like, whole desert dimension?
Yeah, that one was like, that was definitely like,
and the hell knives,
and then the bridge,
the flying hell knives,
the hell bridge with flying knives, hands down one of the greatest. don't even argue with me. One of the greatest scenes in K-drama. I just loved it so much. I mean, Lee Dong in his wide leg linen pants sprawling. You have to listen to our listeners if you haven't.
Yeah, Tale of the Nine-Tailed is bajonkers. It's true.
We did a whole podcast on it. We had a little bit to drink. That was when we really showed our true selves of this podcast, and it was the podcast itself
off
was
the rails.
But like that ending again with the ambiguous happy ending,
right? Yes,
ambiguous. I was just like,
It was.
Well, I guess we'll find out in season 2.
Yeah,
because there's going to be a season 2.
So, and then you know, if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm the zombie one on the podcast. I freaking love zombie dramas. So I would say a close runner-up for me is All of Us Are Dead, which is not funny.
I have not watched that for reasons I am not good at horror.
It's not batshit. It's absolutely fantastic, though. It is a high school set zombie flick. And look, when I first saw the trailers, I thought it was just going to be like a zombie show with high schoolers. I didn't realize like the depth of the emotions and the relationships among all the characters. I didn't realize that was what was going to really grab me, which is one of the reasons I loved it so much. I also thought there was kind of like a zombie high school villain, which I follow him on Instagram now because he killed it as like this like evil zombie that was like half not zombie. I mean, it's like so good.
Smarter than your average zombie.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and also, which I think we'll cover this on the podcast at one point, but there were parallels to the drama with the very real Seawolf ferry disaster.
Oh,
and once I read about those parallels, I realized how an amazing job they did with All of Us Are Dead, and how in a way they kind of gave voice to a lot of those high school students on the ferry who were basically abandoned, who no one was there to help them and rescue them. And so, yeah, there were a lot of layers to that drama, and the cast's acting was incredible, and the actual like zombie lore, just like in Happiness had really cool zombie lore that was unique. This did too. So, yeah, All of Us Are Dead. I mean, I know it's not for everyone. I think you have to...
I do still want to watch it.
I wouldn't say it's for everyone, and that's okay. I would say for me, it was absolutely everything that I personally want in a zombie kind of like flick drama, or flick or a drama. So yeah, I thought it was just freaking awesome.
Wow. All right. So on the lighter side, as a K-pop rec, have you watched Twice It's Ooh Ah, the video?
No.
All right, so if you just listen to the music, it's a very cute boppy song. It's a catchy boppy song. But if you watch the video, it's a high school zombie video where you have a bunch of girls who are just all dressed up in different character types of high school kids. And they're all doing the song and performing the song and cute, but it's in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. So there's zombies like trying to like wander through the school and around them. And then they pull up in a bus and they're completely surrounded by zombies. And I won't spoil it, but stick around after the song's finished and watch the end.
Okay, I will. Thank you, because I'm always down. I'm always down for zombies.
It's a very cute zombie video, and it's a very upbeat one.
Okay. So, Piper, what elements of supernatural K-dramas have inspired you when you write like paranormal romance or any type of non-contemporary romance?
So, I actually have a new series that's launching in April of 2023. It was going to launch this year, and it got pushed due to printer production, etc., right? So, it's coming out April 2023. The series name is Mythwoven, and the first book actually features Thai Kinari, or Bird Princess, meeting a vampire. And I also incorporate a lot of other mythological supernatural creatures, and it's urban fantasy, basically, or contemporary fantasy romance story. But we meet at the end of that book, into book 2, a pair of fox demons, because I'm really, really fond of kitsune from Japanese mythology, and I'm also fascinated by the Korean Gumiho. They're both fox demons. They're both could be nine-tailed foxes. And I think that the biggest difference in the mythology for them is that the Korean Gumiho, a lot more bloodthirsty. Like, they're both shape-shifting capable, and they're elements of mischief. They're like chaos elements. But the Gumiho is known for being bloodthirsty and eating the liver of his victims. But they also have, I'm going to say it wrong, a Yewo Gusul, or a fox speed. And you see it explained a very tiny bit in Tale of the Nine-Tailed, but you really see... I was
like, please explain it more, because I don't get it.
It's actually conceptualized much more beautifully in My Roommate is a Gumiho, if you're willing to watch that.
I did watch that.
All right, so...
I still was a little confused.
It's a tiny bead. It's a mystical bead that comes out of your Gumiho and goes into a human, and it's supposed to be able to carry knowledge. And the amount of time that the human takes it, they can gather knowledge or skills from the bead. But the bead's also potentially taking away life force that is given to the Gumiho. And so, too often in mythology that talks about it, from what I understand, is that humans aren't wise enough to keep the bead long enough to gain all of the knowledge there is to be had. And so they always give it back too soon and miss out on a key piece of knowledge that they would have benefited from. And this is at a very high level when it comes to that mythology. But I will say that My Roommate is Gumiho really makes it beautiful, the way that the bead goes from the Gumiho to his chosen partner, and how he gets
a great
back.
scene.
Very, very high, like, is this gonna be a kiss? Is this a kiss moment? Is this a kiss?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
It's very cool. I like that drama a lot.
Yeah, I think that I liked it for the lighter rom-com elements.
Oh, yeah.
It was
totally.
a much sweeter romance, and Nine-Tailed was a lot angstier, I think. Nine-Tailed was angstier than My Roommate is Gumiho. My Roommate is Gumiho had angst, but it was also sweeter.
Yeah, well, the heroine was fantastic. Yeah. I loved her.
Oh, yeah.
So she was so funny. I mean, she was basically like, it was Duck, you know, she basically played Duck Sun from 1980, Reply 1988, but like in modern day times with a Gumiho roommate. I mean, she was so great. So yeah, I agree. That was a really good drama. Okay, question for all of us. So what do we want to see more of in supernatural K-dramas, whether it's like a type of paranormal being or a trope?
I really love the trope of like your grumpy character, grumpy ex-sunshine combos, right? Like, so I want to see more of that, and I think that there's a huge amount of potential for that when you have a long-lived being who's completely jaded, right? Or just convinced that they don't deserve a happily ever after. Like, they're just doomed to walk this world and this existence. I am here for more stories like that, where they do get a happily ever after. And even though I loved Hotel de Luna and Goblin, like, and My Roommate is a Gumiho even, and Tale of the Nine-Tailed, all of those endings were ambiguous, right? Like, there was happiness here, but you sacrificed something over here that ripped your heart out, and there were very heavy doses of bitter with that sweet. Like, people who eat 80% dark chocolate are gonna like those endings, right? Like, it's tough.
You like your dramas bitter.
I would, like, yeah, I'm here for that. Like, let Kim Shin have his happily ever after without having to, man, it was rough, but I will watch it over and over again. Like, I can't help it. I can't help myself. But I think I also want, like, I found this out. I know that they're out there because I found it out with my desire to see Lee Joon-gi as a vampire and found out that he is in a historical where he is a vampire. So I'm going to watch that. But I'd like to see some contemporary, like, vampire dramas. I think that would be a lot of fun and very, very different.
Yeah, I want more vampires. Like, I want more. Like, I know that there are some out there and that's great, but I want, like, more. I want, like, a mainstream, like, role. You know, I want, like, I don't know, bring out one of the main leads, like Woo Do-won as a vampire. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And I want it like I don't. This is the thing though. I don't know if vampires are in Asian or Korean lore as much as in Western media. Like, that's the only thing. Am I imposing my like lore on them? Does that make sense? Because I just don't know. You know, it's just like, obviously we don't have like the Fox demons as much in Western media, but I just want to see more vampires, and I want like paranormal, meaning I want like contemporary setting with vampires. Like, My Roommate is a Vampire.
I know that there are webcomics. Like, I know that there are webcomics because I've been reading some of those.
Okay, I have a manga that's called Midnight Secretary, and it is very good, very sexy, and I like it a lot. But yeah, he's a vampire. It's like, and she's his secretary, and she does it, and he's like thirsting for her blood. Oh my god, it's so good, it's so good. And yeah, it's like I said, it's really sexy. So listen, K-drama creators, take that manga and do something.
It's there, right? Like, when we were talking about, I don't remember which episode it was, a couple episodes ago, when I was like, I want to see Lee Joon-gi as a vampire, but I'm going to research it really quick first and just make sure that doesn't exist. It's not going to exist. And it exists. So, like, it is there. Like, it's not, you know, even though it might not be as prevalent as zombies or, you know, Fox demons, that it's there. So we're just asking for more.
Yeah, because, like, no one does zombies, I swear, like Korean.
Oh, gosh.
I mean,
they do it so well. Train to Busan
is still one of my favorite movies of all time.
I haven't watched it. I've watched clips of it. I can't handle. I can't handle horror.
I'll just let you know. All of Us Are Dead is like watching however many episodes All of Us Are Dead are. 12. I forget.
Train to Busan.
It's like watching Train to Busan the whole time. Like, I'm serious. It is.
Train to Busan is a zombie movie where I cried I cried in a zombie movie.
And that's why I tell people, I'm like, if you don't like zombies, like, I try to give people
I
expectations.
have zombie stories. Like my London Shifters story, like my London Shifters series, I re-released it last year, and it is werewolves protecting humans from zombies at ground zero of the zombie apocalypse. Like, I write zombies.
Right. It's different.
I don't write horror. Right?
Right. I wrote a whole series under Megan Erickson that, so first of all, they're gay werewolves. Okay. So it's a male series, and it's, the zombies are werewolves and humans are now extinct. So there are werewolf packs that are like not zombies. And so they're like, they've kind of like, you know, regrouped into their separate packs, but they have to kind of like live behind fortified walls it's sort of like what I say, it's the Walking Dead, but with werewolves, and they're male.
Why not?
Females,
right?
And it doesn't go on. It doesn't go on too long.
No, I only have 3 books out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I'm always down for zombies. So anyway, Piper, is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
Let's talk about what we're looking forward to, because there's some stuff, a new supernatural K-drama, especially as many times as we have mentioned Goblin. There's a new supernatural K-drama coming out called Tomorrow. And that's really piqued my interest because they took the concept of Reapers from Goblin, and instead of the Reapers collecting the dead and sending them on to the afterlife, this is almost a crisis response group dedicated to helping people who want to end their lives. So major trigger warning, obviously, for those who are trying to avoid watching anything that has intrusive or suicidal thoughts. But the premise of this is that this is a crisis response group of Reapers, supernatural beings, who are coming to help people not end their lives prematurely. My interest is piqued because it is a group cast of Reapers, and I'm interested to see how they're going to work this out. And then there's also another one that isn't supernatural, but is based off of a webcomic that I was reading earlier. And it's like a cute like contemporary romance rom-com kind of situation that's called The Business Proposal. And it's based on a webcomic that is called The Office Blind Date.
The Tomorrow one, I'm, of course, like I said, every time you mention something, I'm Googling it. Like, I want that now. And it starts April 1st, which by the time this podcast is out, it will have started already. So that's awesome. So everybody go watch Tomorrow, because we're probably going to be watching it. And we are all watching Business Proposal right now because it's so good. But like you said earlier, like watching something while it's, while the episodes are coming out, for Megan, it's been really, really hard because you started it like right when it started. And I had to finish up. We did Mr. Sunshine was our last podcast, and I had to finish watching Mr. Sunshine before I could start watching Business Proposal. So I'm not yet caught up to all the episodes, so I'm still having fun binging. It's smart, because Megan, now you have to wait until Monday.
Yeah, I am obsessed with Business Proposal. It's basically like a perfect rom-com. It has all the tropes you want in a rom-com. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's happy. Someone on Twitter called it like a fluffy ice cream sundae. Perfect description. Oh. Like, do you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's like happy making.
It does the best friend thing so well.
The best friends are so cute. And It's only 12 episodes, so like the writing is very tight. And you can tell. Like I can see how it's been written to fit over 12 episodes, and it's like perfect. Like, I'm glad they didn't make it longer. It's, as much as I'm going to be really sad when it's over, I'm happy because it clearly was written like just really well. Yeah, basically. And actually, I didn't think I knew what Tomorrow was, but now I have seen the trailer, and agreed, it looks amazing. I am very excited for it, and yeah, it starts April 1st. I might watch it live. We'll see.
I'm waiting because I plan to wait. I can't.
I know it's
well.
Really
where is
hard.
it dropping? Where is it, like?
Is it going to simulcast on Viki, or
is it dropping all at once, or is it dropping weekly?
It's going to air on. No, I don't think it's on Netflix. So I think it's dropping on Viki.
It'll simulcast on Viki.
Yeah, and it airs on Fridays and Saturdays.
So. Okay, so no, it's
that is the one thing that I really like about K-dramas too, is that they do Fridays and Saturdays, so you at least get two episodes per week. Yeah, but it's still torture.
It is. So next week we'll get the end of Business Proposal and 2521, which I'm also watching live. Which again, I'm crazy, but I'm excited for a bunch of stuff that's coming up. P.S. Yes, when Business Proposal is done, we highly recommend it. We'll be covering it on the podcast too, because we know a bunch of our listeners are watching it live as well, and they're suffering along with us. But by the time this airs, it'll be over, and we'll all be happy.
Okay.
So, there you go. Okay, so first of all, we want to say thank you to Piper for coming.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Very fun, and we'd like you to. We usually recommend a book at the end of our podcast, so we'd like you to recommend any of your books, whichever one you want.
Oh gosh, I think because of what we've been talking about, because I do write across a lot of different genres, I have a science fiction romance out on Kindle Vella right now that is almost finished. It is a male, female poly. And
I'll read that.
It is science fiction romance, and it is basically an intergalactic K-pop idol who is burned out and is hiding away to get some much-needed rest and relaxation. And his management team has hired 2 bodyguards for him. A grumpy werewolf shapeshifter and a rakish station engineer, who is also a lycanthrope. He's actually a cat shifter, to be his bodyguards while he's hiding away on this, in the middle of nowhere. Nobody stays at this station unless they're on their way to some place else. Space station. And I will tell this podcast that the character who's the intergalactic idol really has some strong Jimin from BTS vibes.
Yes! Oh, Leo will be so happy.
That. Oh my god.
Really, like, and all of this is the first in a potential series. Once I finish it on Kindle Vella, I will be taking it off and pushing it out wide, right? So it won't just be on Kindle Vella. Once it's finished on Kindle Vella, I'll let it stay there for a month or 2 so that people who are following on Kindle Vella have time to finish and read it, and then I will be pulling it and pushing it wide. So it'll be available everywhere, but it is intended to be the first of the series, and the series is, all of the titles are inspired by a particular K-pop song. So this title of this book is An Idol with Love.
Oh, I love
it! For the BTS Army friends. And the next, like, some of the other titles are going to be Don't. And if anybody's a follower of Mamamoo and loves the song that she did jointly with Hwasa and Loco, dang, that song. And then there's also You Can Call Me Monster for the EXO fans. So, yeah, the titles are inspired by K-pop songs, and really I try to capture the vibe of the song in the story.
That's awesome. And this is under Piper J. Drake. This is
under Piper J. Drake. And it's my first poly romance that I've written personally. So I've been really careful about how I approach this, and I'm hoping people enjoy it.
Sounds great. I want to read it, and I can't wait. And when it is available for like full purchase, I'll buy it too, because it sounds really awesome.
Thank you.
So, yeah, well, again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me again.
This was really a lot of fun.
It's like, this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, and I would love to come back to chat with you once you do True Beauty and Extraordinary You, because...
Oh my gosh, we need to. Yeah,
I think we need to, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, just, we say... Annyeong at the end. That's how we say goodbye. So we say, all right, everybody, till next time. Annyeong.
Kamsahamnida. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!